To those of you joining us today, thank you for watching the Woburn Spotlight. I'm your host, Tyler Gates, here to bring you some positivity by talking to those in town, making big strides for the greater good. Today I'm extremely fortunate to have with me Joe Lahiff, who is running for state representative of the 15th District.
Yes, I am.
Joe, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I know we got a lot to talk about. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you a little bit, but why don't you just tell some of the viewers a little bit about you, what you're here to talk about today.
The 15th Middlesex District encompasses all of Lexington and wards 1 and 7 in Woburn. I grew up in Lexington, so having roots there is an easy one, but I also work in Woburn. I've worked in Woburn for the last 5 years for a company called New Path. It used to be CMARC. Most of your viewers might know it as CMARC. We've been here for 50 years. So I've got connections in both, and it's really been a huge bonus for me as far as understanding what the community needs and being able to help offer them my services and try to help.
So you've been very involved, so it sounds as though what you're listening for now may just have shifted over the last, 6 to 9 months now that you've put your hat in the race.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. You know, this was a bit of a surprise to me. And one of the more common questions that I get is, why are you doing this? Why are you running?
Well, that was going to be one of mine, so why don't we spend some time there?
Perfect. It was an easy answer for me, and it forms itself into a bit of a joke. So I hope you'll bear with me. Everybody will bear with me at home as I tell this little story. I was with a few friends on a Friday evening back, I believe it was November, late November. I got a phone call from a friend who follows politics fairly closely, and he said, Jay Kaufman's retiring. So I kind of paused and looked at my friends who were across the table and said, Jay Kaufman's retiring. I'm going to run for state rep. And it was instant.
Boom.
It was just that fast. And they all kind of looked at me, shrugged their shoulders, and went back to talking. Didn't care. Didn't care even a little bit. But I made phone calls. I called a few people I knew would help get my name out there and would help get me into it and get my name out in front of the effort. And had a great conversation with a bunch of people, got it going, went home and was just tickled pink. Woke up the next morning and realized I hadn't told my wife. So
that's a big deal.
It was a big deal. I sat there for an hour terrified that I hadn't told Kelly. She woke up, came downstairs, had coffee, and honey, you know, I got to tell you something. I did something last night and told her what I was doing. She said, yeah, it's in you. Yeah. It's something you've wanted to do your whole life. Go get it, do it. And it is. It's truly something.
It's great to have that support too. You need that support in a race like this.
You need it. If you don't have it, don't do it, because it does take everything. You know, what I've discovered over the last 9 months, almost full 9 months, is it does take everything. You know, if you really want to do it, you're really passionate about it, you put your heart and soul into it, to do it right, it takes all of you. And I'm happy to give that. And she's been great support for me to do it. Part of it comes from me, and if I'm dragging on too long, you got other questions, stop me.
No,
please.
the floor is yours today, my friend. We're going to just have some fun.
Well, I'm a police officer, a retired police officer. I actually joined Lexington Police Department when I was 18 years old as a cadet and worked my way through. Got hired in 1989 as a full patrolman. In 1994, I got elected as a union president for our Lexington Police. It was patrolmen, sergeants, and detectives at the time. The same year, Jay Kaufman was running for election. I remember watching it and just loving every minute of it, thinking the process was fascinating, watching him campaign, watching the race play out. And through the following years as union president, I found myself on Beacon Hill many, many times, asking or lobbying for things, talking to Jay about different issues that were going on, whether it was police funding or higher education benefits for police officers, that kind of stuff. And Jay was always fantastic. He was great to deal with, but more importantly, I saw the way the legislation was taking shape and knew I wanted to be a part of it. I just liked the process. I liked the way they talked about things. I'm a contract language reader by nature. I do it now for New Path. As part of my job there, I am liaison with the union and help management negotiate their contracts with their union. So that kind of thing is in me, and reading bills is contract language. It's basically what it amounts to. So the likeness for it was there. And then later on in my career, I got elected to the National Board of Directors for the entire union, 50,000 person SEIU Local 5,000.
That's no small task.
It was no small task. It was a 4-year term. It was incredible. Did a lot of traveling to DC, lobbying for different bills, got used to it, and liked the process. I knew then it was something I wanted to do. I didn't run against Jay. He was doing a nice job. He's a nice guy. I had a young family. But as soon as I heard the seat was open, that was it. That's it. I was in.
So that initial race, it sounds like I'm following along with Jay, is kind of the spark that
Yeah.
it took for you to realize this is going to be in the works someday.
It was. Being a candidate, just even running for union, you have to get elected to be union president. It's an election. I liked that process. And that's teeny. It's just a small union with 35 guys. This is obviously a slightly bigger thing.
A little bit bigger.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger. So it sounds like kind of your approach to sifting through some of these policies, bills, all of that, that may be one of your strengths that you carry from the current work that you do.
Yeah.
You mind just touching upon some of the other strengths that you bring to the table and opportunities that you see for personal growth throughout the campaign and moving forward?
Sure. First and foremost, and I say this with a great deal of passion, being a state rep for the 15th Middlesex is a capper as far as I can see. It's the position I want to hold. It's something I think I'd be good at. It's something I want to do. I don't see myself progressing and wanting to go and have bigger and higher offices. That's possible at some point. I might not get elected. I might set my eyes on something higher. But state rep fits what I think I'd be best at. I read contract language. I read contract language constantly when I was a union president. I did it as a consultant for New Path before they hired me full time. And I continue to do it now. Reading the labor management decisions from the National Labor Relations Board is something I do commonplace. Reading bills is something that comes firsthand to me. It's fascinating to me to take a bill, and I need to print them out. I'm still a bit old school.
I'm the same. I appreciate that.
I can't do it on the computer. I print them out, and I'll take my highlighter and my pencil, and I'll just highlight and write in the margins.
You and me both.
Yeah. But I find that I'll look at bills and say, geez, I like the way this is going. I would have worded it differently. I think what I'd like to do most is bring my ability to read contract language, to read language that goes into bills. And say, the spirit of the bill isn't encompassed in the language you're using. What if you did it this way? It's a talent that I really mastered as a union president and brought to New Path as a management negotiator for New Path. When we negotiated our contracts with the then chief of police and the town manager in Lexington, there wasn't any adversarial approach to it. There wasn't yelling and screaming and banging your fist. It was, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. What are you trying to accomplish? Let's talk about the language and get there together. I don't think we ever went without a contract. We always negotiated our contracts in advance of the expiration date. Carrying that forward to New Path, when they brought me in, they asked me to negotiate their first full 3-year contract with a 350-person SEIU union. It's a big union at New Path. So we negotiated successfully, had a great experience doing it. 3 years just expired. Still at New Path, still loving what I'm doing. They asked me to sit down and negotiate with the union again. So we sat down and we negotiated a successor agreement, a 3-year successor agreement, including a large pay raise, 13% for every employee. We did it in 2 days. It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't screaming and yelling. What did the union want? What did management want? And so long as both parties can recognize that in order for us to stay in business, we have to figure this out. And that existed. And I think that exists at the State House. I think I could probably help the process along a lot better.
That's a great point. And I know this journey is, I don't want to say new to you, but this is definitely a shift in what the direction you were taking. I'm sure you've learned a lot about yourself, about the campaign. What are some opportunities of growth that you see yourself really being able to learn a lot at or get better at over the next 6, 9, 12 months?
Well, I started out this venture, I guess the best lesson I've learned being a candidate is that talking isn't exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And it's what they ask you to do. It's what we're asking right now. You don't want to hear from me. You want me to talk to people and tell them what I stand for. I've found that when I go door knocking or when I'm talking to people in an audience or at a coffee or a meet and greet, I do much better when I listen. And if I just sit and, I know what I want. I want safe schools. I want to attack the opioid crisis. I want to improve conditions for people living with disabilities. I want to give a voice to, I work at New Path and we support people with disabilities. Some of them cannot speak, don't have a loud enough voice. They literally can't speak. And I'd like to help with those things. But those are my passions. I like listening, and I think I've learned more than anything to sit and listen and let people express what they want to get out and what they need from a state rep in their lives to make their lives a little bit better. So listening has definitely improved for me. As a union guy, you talk to your union members, you tell them what the town is doing or what the chief wants them to do, or you pass along information, and you try to listen, but it's not as necessary. I think it's critical in this job to listen. So that's something that I've really experienced. And I started off knocking on people's doors and telling them about myself, and I still do that a little bit, but I've learned to try to open the door more for them to talk to me and tell me what they need. What would you like me to do when I get there? So that's the biggest lesson I think I've learned so far. I've also learned more than ever, and I'm saying this now knowing that it's on a Woburn TV show, I love Woburn. I absolutely love this town. I came in here to work back in 2013 with New Path. I joined the Lions Club. I'm a member of the Woburn Host Lions Club, some of the greatest people I've ever met. On the back of the hat that they give us when we volunteer, it says "We serve." And that's exactly what the Lions Club does. All 3 of the Lions Clubs here in Woburn are incredible at service. I've found in general, Woburn has more service organizations contributing to the betterment of the community than any town I've ever seen. The Kiwanis, the Rotary, all 3 of the Lions Clubs. The Elks in town are fantastic. There are just some great groups of people doing some great work.
There really is.
And
Yeah.
I love being part of it. I participated in the last 3 Halloween parades. They were great. I was walking down the street with Rich Quayle, who's a good friend and used to be the athletic director here at Woburn High School, learning the people in Woburn love their parade. They should be very proud of it.
It's definitely something to be proud of. The Lions did a great job.
Well, those are the biggest things I guess I've learned so far, but most of it is just really happy that people are accepting me as a viable candidate, talking to me, wanting to hear how I plan to win and what I can do to make their lives a little bit better. So I guess that's the best.
As it sounds like it's definitely got to be interesting, and as you've noticed, you got to listen where I know you know how to do that, and you have that skill set. But I'm sure going door to door, you expect to almost tell people about you. But it's great that you're getting kind of that other side of the scenario.
It's huge.
Huge.
You know, I did an interview on Lexington TV, Lex Media, and it was the same format. And Steve Iverson being the host, he wound up talking more tin he ever talks in any of his interviews. I just somehow was able to kind of get him to tell me.
That's funny.
Tell me what you want
Yeah.
as a state rep. So his issue was mental health, and we talked about that for a while. So
Yeah.
feel free if you've got something you want me
I'll
to hear.
fire some questions
let
at
me
you. My
know.
next question for you was to the point of listening. And so while you're out there, or for voters that are watching today or just out there, what are the questions in your mind they should be asking of you and of the candidates that are in this race?
Sure. I guess the biggest question is, where do we differ?
Yep.
And there are some great similarities. We are all Democrats.
Do you want to spend some time on this? I'd love to know a little bit more where you stand on that.
If you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yeah.
We are all Democrats, all 5 of us, and we have some core beliefs. So there are a lot of similarities. The differences are a pretty sharp line. We've done 5 debates so far. There have been 5 debates scheduled, one of them here in Woburn. And actually, I think it was recorded by Lex Media and did a great job. I'm giving a little bit of compliment here, but I watched it and loved every minute of it. I got asked a question, where do you stand on taxes?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was the Fair Share Amendment they were talking about, which is now in a study and has been struck down by the Supreme Court. But it was an interesting question, and all 4 of the people running against me were absolutely in favor of it, raising taxes, and it should be. I was a no, and I still am a fairly solid no on raising taxes. One of the things that's kind of disappointed me, and I make a point of saying this pretty regularly, every bill that I've gone to read, as a police officer, I read tons of general laws. That's what we read, the laws that had already been passed. And I'd read a few bills, but mostly it was passed general laws, and how do you enforce them? Reading bills as they're taking shape, what I've been discovering is the vast majority of the bills that are under study get put into a commission, and they assign 12, 10, 15 people to review the bill, and then attach a budget of 50, 100,000, 150,000 to every single bill. Some of them could be seemingly the most easy bills to say, no, we're not going to do that. Or yeah, that's a no-brainer. Let's go ahead and do that. But it's become common practice to assign these studies and these commissions and these amounts of money to review them all. I'd like to take a much closer look at how we're spending money. That's just one example of where I think we're probably could see some savings. And before I agree to raise anybody's taxes, whether you be a millionaire or not, you're going to have to convince me that we're spending our money effectively first. That's one of the significant differences.
Yep.
Safe communities was another one. Right now, there's a bill out in the State House that's under study. It's coming out in December. It's called the Safe Communities Act. We were all asked, do we support that? And again, there was 4 yeses, and I guess I sounded fairly authoritarian. No, not in favor of it. And they asked me to elaborate, which everybody else elaborated on their positions. I've read the Safe Communities bill. What's going on at our borders has very little to do with the Safe Communities Act. They both involve immigration, but they have nothing to do with each other as far as practically speaking. The border situation is just atrocious and needs to be changed, needs to be fixed. The federal government's got to fix what's going on down there. It's awful. The Safe Communities Act here in Massachusetts, in my opinion, limited communications between local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and federal agencies. As a police officer, knowing the value of communication when you're out in the street at 2 o'clock in the morning with no other assistance, and knowing who you're dealing with, being able to call another agency and say, I need help, who is this, is critical. It's critical to keep me safe. It's critical to keep the community safe. It's critical as far as making sure that someone that belongs in the neighborhood is allowed to do whatever they need to do. Somebody that doesn't belong isn't allowed to stay. So limiting communications through the Safe Communities Act was a big concern to me, and that was a pretty stark no.
Yep.
And then our priorities. I guess the other issue that would differentiate your candidates is priorities. With so many similarities, you wind up inevitably switching to, well, what are you going to do first? For me, school safety.
That's a fair question.
It is.
School safety?
School safety for me is a first.
Okay.
It definitely is.
And how do you go about doing that day one?
That's a great question. And
It's a loaded question. I know there's a lot to go into it, but where do we
it
start?
is. I have an unfair advantage with it. So we were at one of the debates, and someone asked a question, I think it was questions from the audience at this point, of how would you make schools safer? And my comment was, well, I want to thank my mom for asking this question because it's a ground ball for me. It's an easy one. As a part of my career as a police officer, I spent 5 years as a school resource officer. I was in schools every day. I was assigned as predominantly at Minuteman Regional High School, but town-wide. I went to Lexington High School, went to middle schools, and then got sworn in as a special in Lincoln so that I could help with Lincoln schools because part of Minuteman stretched into Lincoln at the time. It's under construction now, it's going to be different, but at the time was necessary. We did some fantastic and innovative things back then to keep schools safe, and not only keep them safe from the active shooter things that everybody panics about, but keep them safe from bullying, keep them safe from kids that might go afoul of the law and would, in years past, go into the court system and then spiral into a just ongoing uphill battle in life. Well, we took that away, created a partnership with then District Attorney, Middlesex District Attorney was Martha Coakley. We created a thing called the Juvenile Diversion Program, where instead of going into the court system, you'd go into a partnership in meetings with the school, with the DA's office, and with the police department and parents. All 4 would sit down with the child or young adult, could have been as old as 17, and talk about why you did what you did, how do we avoid court, and how do we keep you from doing that again. And we found it incredibly beneficial, and it just blossomed and grew to the point where our Minuteman had an in-district population including 16 towns. I'd go to every single town and meet with representatives of the police department, representatives of the school committees from each of the different towns, and open up lines of communications for all of the students that were coming to Minuteman. And one of the things that we discovered that was really instrumental in protecting kids is that not everything that impacts a student during school is necessarily a school issue. I had a student that came to me one time, and my mom is getting beaten up by my dad. The student didn't live in Lexington. They lived in, I think it was Lincoln. I don't have the authority to enforce the law in Lincoln. And a math teacher teaching math might never know that. The student elected to tell me about it because the trust that had been built there. Having a school resource officer in that instance mattered. And it was explained to me really well by then Principal Jim Amara, a brilliant, brilliant man. He said, Joe, kids in schools control the flow of information completely. They decide who they're going to talk to, when they're going to talk to them, where they're going to talk to them, what they're going to say, how much of it they're going to say, and what questions they're going to answer. And then he used it as an example. You have kids. You ever ask your kids how was school and what do you get back?
Good.
Good.
Fine.
The kids will, when they need something, they'll
Yeah.
reach out to people. And that might be a teacher, might be a coach, might be a guidance counselor, might be a school resource officer. You need to have that collection of people there
For when that moment.
for when that moment happens. And the other things that will wind up happening, you know, I'd walk through the cafeteria as a school resource officer and see what I saw is a student in distress. And a math teacher isn't looking for that. A math teacher is looking for how's your math homework. Guidance counselor is looking for is your course load too heavy. They might not be looking at the things that a police officer would look at. Not approaching it as a law enforcement, but as a caretaker person. That's what school resource officers primarily are. You're able to look at a kid and say, this is a kid in crisis, and get them the supports they need. Reach out to the guidance counselor, say, I'm seeing this. I think you might want to meet with Johnny, whoever it might be, and talk to them. And I found that really valuable. Woburn has school resource officers. Lexington has cut back somewhat on that program because of their understaffing issues. But statewide, I think it should be expanded upon really, really in a great way to make not just Woburn a better place, or Lexington a better place, but statewide we could use that program. Sean Garbely actually built on it. Sean's a representative in Arlington. Built on it from the adult population with a bill he just got passed called Restorative Justice. I think it's a fantastic bill. I liked the way it was written. I had a couple of edits that I would have made, but I agreed with his language, and I'm not there yet, so I wasn't able to add my 2 cents. But he did a great job with it, and what that does is bring in a lot of the things that juvenile diversion did to the adult population. So I applaud Sean for his efforts in the State House for passing it. I think it's a great bill.
So that's day one, and you got a big day one. I don't know if you can get that in 8 or 12 hours.
Day one might be just finding my desk.
There you go. But I appreciate you elaborating on that. It definitely gives us an insight on where you're headed and what you see your skill set being able to bring to the table.
Yeah.
So. What do you have for events? If somebody watching today, I know we're getting close to the end of our time, what do you have for upcoming events, any coffees, meetings?
Yeah.
Do you have a website that we can go take
Absolutely,
a look at?
we do. I thank you for asking. At www.joelahiff.com is our website. It's got my email on it. It's josephglahiff@gmail.com. If I knock on your door, I'd appreciate it if you'd open and just give me 2 minutes of your time and let me tell you who I am. Every time I knock on the door, I hand somebody a card. It's got my personal cell phone on it. I welcome phone calls. In fact, I'll give it out now if that's acceptable.
It's acceptable, whatever you're willing to give
My
us.
cell phone is 781-935-9513. Please feel free to give me a call. I'd like to have your vote on September 4th. I'm asking for you to come out and vote. That's most important. And vote for Joe, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. I'm excited to see kind of where you progress to and where you can take your career at this stage of the game. So if there's anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers, now would be the great time to do so. If not, thank you again for joining us.
No, I appreciate the time. Thank you. I'm proud to be here and keep up the great work. Thank you. Vote on September 4th.
September 4th. Joe, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tyler.
I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Me too.
And thank you all for watching today's show with Joe Lahiff. Remember, we all have one life to live. Let's all do our part. I'm your host, Tyler Gates. Join us again next time for another episode of the Woburn Spotlight.